need my water?
Deanie.
No, I'm okay. For now. Oh, yeah, I'm okay. I got one in the car.
But yeah, the little is good. Oh, some over there too.
No, as long as we're under there, we're good. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Can I have your attention, please? Can I have the following pallbearers? Tyler Klein, Gordon Klein, Trevor Klein, Paul Lehman, Barry Sulphur, Steve Sulphur, Josh Trove, Frank Lester, Al sorry. If I can have the immediate Klein family join me at the back of the room.
I want your dad to.
Dad here.
Or here?
Dad right here.
Or right here.
And I'll just stand behind you. Put Dad right here.
There's shade over here. There's shade right here.
I'll get it.
He needs to.
Dad, right? Yeah.
You signed the book. You signed the books up there.
Sign it. I will. Yep.
Some real night to sleep in our house?
Yep.
I'll hold it. That good? Put it down on you. Is that okay? You okay?
Who's the man?
He was the pilot with.
This was taken at Grandma E's.
Oh.
Which birch?
Forgot. Sister, 100?
Yes.
We had the who?
gentlemen, if I could have your attention for just a brief moment. Before we begin today's services, I'd like to kindly remind you to silence your cell phones. And if you're wearing a jacket, it's okay to take it off at this time. Not overheat. We do have water available in a couple locations, and we have umbrellas if you'd like some shade. If anyone is feeling lightheaded, please sit down and notify us, and we'll get you some help immediately. Again, if you don't need to wear a jacket at this time, please remove it for your safety. Officiating today's services is Rabbi Ari Margolis.
Bruchim Habayim, welcome as we come together on this day. We come together to honor and to remember our beloved Richard Klein. And as we are here on this day, one of the things we know about Richard is that he loved people. He loved getting to know people. He loved getting to know all the things about us. He wanted the best for all of the people he had met, wherever he went. And so, on this day, he would want to make sure that you are being safe as well. And so, even though we are here to honor him, we can honor him best by making sure that we are taking care of ourselves, making sure that we're drinking water. If we are in the sun and we feel faint, to make sure that we get into the shade when we sit down. So let's honor him by making sure that we keep the focus on him and taking care of ourselves. As we begin our service, I'm going to invite his immediate family here to engage in the ritual of Kriya, which is the ritual that means tearing. It gives us the chance to take a ribbon that we have placed on our clothing and to tear it as a sign of how our hearts are torn. There are no words that come close to truly expressing how our hearts feel at this time. I want to invite you to repeat this blessing. Baruch Atah Adonai Dayan Ha'emet. Blessed are you, O God, who judges in truth. This is not truth that we wanted, but it is our truth. We have to be able to accept it. And that's why our hearts are torn. So for torn hearts, I invite you to come from the bottom of the ribbon and make a rip out of the third halfway up. Make it a little tough. Get it started. So as we come together here today, we're here to honor a man who had many talents, many interests, who was interested in everyone he met, but interested in all kinds of things, aviation. He loved trains. He loved gaming. But he worked so hard to make sure that his interests weren't just hobbies off to the side. They were a central part of who he was. So I brought this poem as someone who made an impact wherever he went to frame our time here together by Georgia Harkness, who wrote, "A giant pine, magnificent and old, stood staunch against the sky. It fell one day. Where it had dauntless stood was loneliness and void, but those who passed paid tribute. They said to know this life was good. It left its mark on me, and so its work still stand fast, and so it lives. Such life no bonds can hold, this giant pine, magnificent and old." Richard Klein was a giant pine in our lives, a fixture who was larger than life in so many ways. And as we are here to remember him, we heard both to acknowledge our sadness and our pain. Because we have to. It's okay to feel this way. To not be okay in the facing of such a gigantic loss. And yet at the same time we are here to honor him and to lift up his memory in his spirit so that we can let go of the ways he left us and to re-embrace the ways in which he lived. And so we turn to the words of our Psalms to give us just a few opportunities to express some of the hopes we have for his soul and for our own. So we turn to the Psalms 121, which you don't have in your packets, so you're just going to have to bear with me for one moment. I lift my eyes to the mountains. Where will my help come from? We pray our help comes from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth, that the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps, but that God is your guardian, your protection at your right hand. We pray that the sun will not strike you by day nor the moon by night, but that God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming now and forever. Amen. And in our programs, we do have on the inside of the packet the words of Psalm 23, which is traditional for us to recite. Adonai ro'i lo echsarvino deshet yarvitzeni. We read together. God is my shepherd, I shall not want. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures. God leadeth me beside the still waters. God restoreth my soul. God guideth me in straight paths for God's name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of God forever. As we say these words of tradition for him and his soul, and the hopes that we have for our souls in finding comfort and love even in these times, we acknowledge that each one of these tears that we shed is here because our love for him is that great. These are badges of our love. Part of what we are here to do today is to share that love with one another by remembering who he has been and the impact that he has made. We lift him up with words of respect, words of honor, and we're going to invite Craig to come forward to be our first to honor him.
Hello, I'm Rich's youngest son, Craig. First, on behalf of my family, I want to thank everyone who's here today, has sent kind words from afar, and offered their support during this time. I want to share a few words about my dad. It's difficult to do this, but as one of my dad's favorite quotes says, there is no try, only do. On the surface, my dad presented as a regular Chicago guy. He grew up on the north side of Rogers Park, was the son of a hardware store owner, went to Sullivan, loved Italian food, the Bears, the Blackhawks, and the Cubs, and hated the Sox with all his being. He was a Chicago public school teacher for 30 years, and also ran his own successful photography business for even longer. He married his high school sweetheart Elaine, had 3 sons, and moved to the promised land of Buffalo Grove to stake out a life for himself and his family. By all accounts, he was a successful, regular guy. But what many of you don't know was that Rich was actually an alien who came from another planet. This may come as a shock, but allow me to explain. I don't say this just because he was a huge science fiction fan, because he certainly was, and he loved to share his passion with his kids. For example, when the second Star Wars movie came out, he took me out of kindergarten to see it on opening day. My dad was a teacher, but to him, the lessons in these films were as important as anything you could learn in school. I also vividly remember going with him and the whole family to the Woodfield Mall Theater to see the original Alien movie. I was about 6 at the time, and the image of the alien popping out of the unsuspecting crew member's guts is forever etched in my mind. A few years later, out of the blue, he came and pulled me out of school and took me to the music box for an all-day sci-fi B-movie marathon. Invaders from Mars, The Came from Outer Space, all the movies he liked as a kid. He was sharing his interest with me, and those are special memories, but I also think my dad was trying to communicate something. And that was this: he was an alien, not of this world, and that by genetic extension, so was I. He loved the music of those films, and he collected all kinds of sci-fi soundtracks and electronic music. Vangelis was one of his all-time favorite artists, and I remember him many weekend mornings waking up to him blaring the Blade Runner soundtrack from the family room, while he tested the flashes and lights on his camera equipment for a shoot he was doing later that day. I think the preparation he did for these jobs was almost as fun for him as the shoots themselves. And his preparation was extensive. He was a gearhead, and he loved fine-tuning his equipment and trying out all the latest photo gadgets. He'd have me sit there in front of the portrait backdrops to practice his shots for what seemed like hours. Strobes going off left and right, and this otherworldly music pumping at maximum volume. As I've gotten older, I realized this really imprinted on me, and I've grown to love the same music and films. Another hint of my dad's alien origins was his interest in aviation, which he took to the extreme. He spent countless hours studying maps and flight manuals and practicing using the flight simulator on the home computer, eventually obtaining his pilot's license, surely against my mother's wishes. I don't know if many of you have been in a Cessna before, but it can be terrifying. You feel every gust of wind and bit of turbulence. But he loved it, and I felt safe with him. Up there, you can see things from a totally different perspective. The world makes a different kind of sense. The roads, the patterns of fields and the houses, and all the little lives down below. I think he really enjoyed that, and we did. You're in this world, but hovering ever so slightly above it. I shouldn't say this, but a few times he even let me take the controls. Again, he was sharing his interest with me, and perhaps he was also preparing for something. The last breadcrumb of my dad's alien origin story was his lifelong interest in photography. Professionally, he was primarily known for his event and portrait work, but he also captured beautiful images of the natural world. Until just a few weeks ago, he was taking pictures, planning future shoots, and learning new camera techniques. He absolutely loved taking pictures and documenting the world around him. Over these last few days, I've been looking at his pictures. It's a gift to be able to see the world as he saw it, the things he observed and chose to photograph. One of his favorite places to shoot was Red Rock Canyon outside of Las Vegas. He made pilgrimages there for years with his camera in tow. Why Red Rock Canyon, you ask? Sure, it's scenic, but I think I see now that there was another reason. Maybe it was actually because the otherworldly beauty of that landscape reminded him of a planet far, far away. Maybe the very one he came from. When I say that my dad was an alien, I mean that he saw things differently. He studied the world deeply to understand its ways, and forged his own unique path. I'm going to miss my dad deeply, but I'm thankful for all the time we spent together, and how he instilled in me the same sense of curiosity about the world, and the same desire to continue to learn and create and follow my passions, however unusual. I like to think at this very moment, he's listening to his space music on full blast, and is piloting his ship at warp speed back to his home planet. Dad, as the saying goes, I hope everything is blue skies and tailwinds on your voyage home. I love you.
Thank you for these incredible, wonderful memories. You told me that he was into sci-fi, but you didn't tell me Star Wars in particular. As we remember all of these wonderful images and these moments that he has given, This is part of what we're here to do, is to flip that switch in our minds a little bit at a time, to go from the sadness of what we will not have moving forward to the appreciation of what we have been so blessed to share. So we thank you for sharing your blessings with us today, and so many of us can relate to those moments of Richard making us just feel like he's taking an interest in us and sharing himself in such deep ways. And so we're going to now invite Paul to come forward to share some words and also to read a statement from Richard's friend Bob.
Oh, yes. I'm gonna do it.
Oh,
You can do that. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul. I'm married to Jennifer. And just want to say a few words about Richard. Richard Klein, husband, father, grandfather, accomplished pilot, photographer, teacher, and at times, as I'm sure Elaine can attest, a little stubborn. In the oh so short amount of time that I knew Richard, what stood out most of all is a man with an open heart, a deep kindness, gentleness, and a caring attitude towards anyone he met. I'm giving this tribute to his life today, pure in my own opinion, of a gentle man who is and will be missed. Jennifer and I were so fortunate to be able to spend what was going to be a last weekend with Richard and Elaine, and to meet his extended family. We arrived July 19th, and from the moment I stepped into the car, I felt a part of the family. I felt welcomed and loved, and as you know, he had that way with people. We did all the touristy things, such as the river cruise, and got to see downtown Chicago. Rich and Elaine, who, as you know, been incredibly knowledgeable, and after 57 years of marriage, there was barely a landmark that Richard did not know some pertinent facts and information. I'm sure he could have given the boat tour guide some tips. The girls that Friday decided they wanted to go shopping, and Richard planned this great guy's day out for the two of us, which involved some sightseeing, some picture opportunities, and getting attacked by geese. After the brutal and vicious attack by the killer geese, I'm exaggerating slightly, Richard took me to RJ Grunt's, a very famous local restaurant, to have a heart attack burger. He had a similar one, which apparently was his go-to favorite, and then he snuck in an ice cream milkshake, and like a little boy, mischievously grinned at me and said, "Don't tell Elaine." After lunch, he took me to Wrigley Fields for some photo ops, and then also to the statue of Michael Jordan, who apparently is some famous cricket player. I'm a sports fan. But joking aside, Richard was a very keen Bears and Cubs fan, as I'm sure you all know. What was most fun for me was seeing that enthusiasm and being able to share in his knowledge and his experience. We also visited Erickson, the school where he taught photography for over 30 years. And in all those years he taught there, he definitely influenced a lot of the young guys. Speaking of which, we went to the southern side of the school where he taught, and we sat there in his car and looked at what is now in the process of being rebuilt, an area that was burned to the ground after the Martin Luther King assassination. I think what impressed me more than anything else is the esteem and love that his students had for him and the rest of the faculty. Because before that riot, a number of the students came to the school and ensured that Richard and the other teachers were escorted safely to the freeway, as they couldn't guarantee his safety. After that, sadly, most of the neighborhood was burned to the ground, except for the school, not a broken window, not one piece of damage. So today, I ask you all to remember about the good times, the laughter, the family, and the impact that Richard had on so many people. Remember, this is a celebration of his life and not his passing. Richard has left a mark on so many people over an accomplished life of dreams and aspirations that come to fruition. I thank him for the mark he left with me.
A very special relationship with you and Jennifer meant a lot to you, but it meant a lot to him as well. We're going to now call upon Jeff to come forward to share some words of reflection.
First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here and support our family. I can't tell you how much this means to us, how much it would have meant to my dad to see you all here. This has been very hard, as you can imagine, so I'm going to do my best to get through this. So I've been thinking about this for the past couple of days, and I haven't been able to come up with just the right words So please bear with me while I share some of my thoughts about my dad. My dad was there for me at every important moment. It started when he taught me how to ice skate. From there, it was coaching not just my teams, Little League teams, but Craig's, Doug's. Taught me how to fish, taught me his love of aviation, taught me about photography. When I was older, he was there the moment my children were born. The first faces I saw after my wife gave birth and when I met my children was seeing my parents in the waiting room. And my dad had the camera right there. He always did. When I was older, when I took up running is something I started doing in about the year 2010. He became my biggest fan. Everybody, he was there at every one of the races I did. I could always count on him being there. There were two races in particular that my dad never missed. Even the year when he had kidney cancer and he had surgery, he still made it out there a few months later. The North Shore Half Marathon in Highland Park, I would always count on him to be at the Braeside train station. He was there. I knew where to look for him. He also, along with my mom, they showed up to the Chicago Marathon every year, right by the United Center. Weather didn't matter, they were always there. And my dad was there for the biggest moments in my life, with the camera in his hand, of course. In fact, Craig touched on this, but in all of these moments, my dad had his camera in his hand. It was always important to him to have his camera ready to capture important moments in life. He was truly an artist with the camera. I would look at my dad's pictures sometime and I would ask him, how did you do that? I mean, these pictures were amazing. It was a gift. And he would tell me, he just pushed the button. He would always tell me that he just pushed the button. And I was in disbelief because the ability, the skill, the way that he was able to capture the moment and capture those little things in life that, in a way that I frankly have never been able to see anybody do it. Those are memories that will last a lifetime. There's two quick stories I want to talk about with my dad, and they're very recent in the last 2 years. My dad was a big Chicago Bears fan, as everybody knows. 2 years ago, my brother Doug and I, we took a road trip with him to Pittsburgh to see the Bears play the Steelers. The Bears lost the game, of course, because we lose every game. But the experience was one that we'll never forget. And as great as it was, my dad was trash talking with the Pittsburgh fans. He didn't care, didn't bother him. But he had to buy one of the terrible towels in Pittsburgh. And I was in his basement this morning with my mom, and it's right there, probably displayed with all of his others. And then the second quick memory is last year, just about this time, in fact, my son Tyler and I, we took my dad to Green Bay to see the Bears play the Packers. And again, we lost, but we had a truly amazing time. And my dad loved every second of it. I can't talk about my dad without talking about my mom. They are soulmates, which began when they were teenagers. They built a great life together, which includes children, grandchildren, friends, many of you who are here today. There was nothing more important to my dad than family and friends. I was thinking about the best way to conclude my thoughts, and one of my dad's very dear friends, Frank Lesser, is here today, and he just wrote some words that said everything I wanted to say in the most perfect way. So as everybody knows, my dad was a pilot. Frank is also a pilot. So he was speaking pilot to my dad when he wrote this. And this is how I want to remember my dad. Winds ahead, Rich. Your cleared present position direct and an unrestricted climb. No traffic at your 12 o'clock. See you in the debrief. Love you, Dad.
Doug to come forward, I want to also just remind us all to make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. If you are feeling a little bit thirsty, then it's the time to come and grab some water. If you are feeling just a little bit weak, this is the time to make sure to sit down, move to the shade, or even return to your car for a little bit. Please make sure that we're taking care of ourselves. And now we're going to invite Doug to come forward.
Nice. Wow. First of all, thanks everybody for coming today to honor my dad. I'm Doug, I'm his oldest son. So I'm gonna do really two things. And thanks for coming out. I know there's so many people that came out from near, far, traveled all around from the country to be here. It's what a great honor for my dad, and again, express our gratitude as a family for you guys all being here. So I'm gonna do two things. One of his really good friends, Bob Joseph, from California, who could not be here, wrote a really nice note, and he asked me to read it. So I'm going to do that and then share a few thoughts about my dad. This is from Bob. First, my family sends love and condolences to the Klein family, especially Elaine. I first met Rich when I pledged Tau Delta Phi at Roosevelt University in 1961. Rich was one of my pledge brothers, along with Eric Spitzer, Eric might be here, Phil Manass, and Billy Goldsmith. The four of us bonded and throughout our college days became great friends, and that continued when we all got married as well. Rich was one of the nicest people I have ever known, and funny as well. Two stories that I remember about Rich from those days. As many of you may or may not know, Rich was when he played hockey, he was a goalie playing on a local team whose name I do not remember. Eric, Billy, and I would go to many of his games and cheer him on. Now, in those days, goalies did not wear masks or helmets, so there were frequent times when Rich would get hit in the head and require immediate medical assistance. And he had the scars to prove it. So we would take him to the emergency room for stitches and then take him home. But the best part was that his mom always had a large pot of spaghetti cooking on the stove because she was a great Italian cook. Obviously, we ate very well during those visits. The next story is funny because while reading Rich's obituary online, I noticed that one of the requests for donations was to the Lou and Jean Malnati Brain Tumor Institute. The guys used to go to Lou Malnati's restaurant quite a bit when we were downtown, and one night when we were without our girlfriends, without you, Mom, we stopped in for some pizza. Well, Rich was boasting how he liked lots of red pepper on his part of the pizza, so we dared him to eat a couple of pieces and would cover them with as much red pepper as possible. He said he would do it for $5, so we all chipped in, and sure enough, he ate the 2 pieces, and as he ate, his face started turning bright red and sweat started pouring down over his face. We were all laughing, but he finished both pieces. He probably drank 4 to 5 glasses of water, and the next day he could not taste a thing, and that happened for almost a week. So whenever we had pizza, we would always bring up that day. Rest in peace, Rich. We love you, our brother, and Mr. Golan. So really great note from his really good friend. So I'll kind of conclude because I know it's freezing out here, and I don't want to get cold. So my retrospect to my dad, there's so many. He's had what I always look at is the journey that he was on through his whole life. We know about him being an amazing hockey player, and but other things that he did, not just to better himself. He got a master's degree. When he was a teacher in Chicago for 30 years on the west side at a school called Leif Erikson. It's obviously in a tough neighborhood, and he excelled at that. But one of the things that he did was, we talked about his love for photography and aviation, and he actually created a curriculum that they used for the magnet schools in Chicago to teach photography and aviation to students, and they would bring them in to teach them a new way to learn, a new way to kind of look at engaging in all the different types of things that you would do in learning about aviation. Think about geometry, mathematics, calculation, weather. So it's really a really interesting thing that he really pioneered, and I'm so proud of that. Of course, his flying, and I see, with Frank here, and he flew all over the world. So he didn't just fly Cessnas in the Midwest. He was in Idaho. He flew over the English Channel at the White Dover. He flew in Hong Kong. So he just wanted to experience everything. Of course, such a dedicated husband to my mom. Met when they were 14. First date was at a place called Candlelight Pizza, which is at Chewy and Western, and it is still there in Chicago. It's really good pizza. So, and of course he loved his whole family, you know, my brothers, you know, all the grandkids, his unbelievable daughter-in-laws, family and friends. So really, those are some just amazing things about his journey. I could go on and on about the memories because there are just too many to say, but you know, maybe I'll give you a couple. And also, I wanted to thank the Rotary Club for being here too. One of the things when we were growing up, because we loved football, so on Monday Night Football, we would go out in the backyard during halftime. It was snowing, and he would, my brothers and I would play him, and for me, I would be a running back, and he would certainly tee off on me, and you know, it's kind of funny. That's probably why I'm short like this. So. I mean, it happens. But anyway, so we had such a great, you know, so many great memories. You know, one of the things my dad and I talked a lot about was sports, and so, you know, I kind of look at this as a journey. And you know, at the very end, a couple days before he passed, in the morning, it was just he and I in a room, and we were talking, and he was actually really at peace. And we talked about a lot of things, but the very last thing that we talked about was, but our favorite subject was, we talked about sports. And sorry, Jay, he was smiling about the last game that he actually watched was when the Cubs hit a walk-off home run against the White Sox to kind of win that game. And that's how we kind of left it. We smiled, and that was actually my last real memory of him, but it's the one that I'm going to carry forward. I'm not going to think about some of the stuff that went on the last month. He was alive for 970 months. He had an unbelievable health span. 969 and a quarter was really good. So that's the thing that I'm going to focus on. He was able to do everything he wanted in life, and you know, up until the very end. So that I'm just so proud of him. So a couple of things I'll just conclude with. Some key lessons that I've taken away from observing my dad being such a great friend of his is, and you kind of see it here, things that he did. Be nice to people. Treat them how you'd want to be treated. And I always saw that manifest in anything that he did. And that's why he rubbed people so well. He always talked to us about, don't worry about anything except for be the best you. Be the best that you can be. And that's all that matters. So whenever we played sports or we were in school, did you give it your best? Because that's, you know, at the end of the day, you know, the most important thing. And to try new things. Experiment. So he was, as you heard from my brothers and Paul, did a lot of interesting things because he tried. So, well, and I'll leave you with a quote because, as some of you know, I might be a pretty decent Bruce Springsteen fan, but he had a really great. One of the songs he loved from Bruce was "Dancing in the Dark," and Bruce has a line in "Dancing in the Dark," and I'm going to really think about this when I think about my dad. At the very end, it says, "You can't start a fire without a spark, and you can't start a fire sitting around crying with a broken heart." So what I'm going to do is I'm going to warn my dad. I'm sad, but I'm going to take that line because he loved that song and say that spark is going to be him for me. And I'm going to try to take a lot of the things that I learned from him over the 55 years and try to be a really good steward of that. So just want to thank everyone for coming out. I know this is it's tough out here and hot, but really appreciate it. Thanks.
Beautiful remembrances, and as you said, what you're taking with you is a way of really living his memory. In our tradition, we often say, may his memory be a blessing to us, but I think we also hope may his memory be a blessing through us when we live according to the ways he's taught us. So thank you for inspiring us to do so. What is written, it is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, to hope, to dream, to be, and oh, to lose. thing for fools this, and a holy thing. A holy thing to love. Your life is lived in me. Your laugh once lifted me. Your word was gifted to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. It is a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love when death is touched. We do love Richard deeply, and all the blessings that he's given to us in his days, and we are not fools to have loved him. We feel holy because of it. As we remember him, it's hard to remember Richard without acknowledging that he and Elaine, you have shared 57 years of marriage together, and even more of sharing life together. The two of you have always had a very special relationship. Even though he was in a different set of clubs than you were in, even though your interests were a little different from one another, even though some might even say you're total opposites, you complete one another. And it is such a gift and a blessing to find someone to share life with and trust in such deep, meaningful ways. A relationship where each of you could be yourselves, and each of you makes the other one better because of you. You're there. Not only did you make him better, but your family embraced him in incredible ways. It's your father who was the one who first got him his very first photography kit. And when he got that kit, he didn't just read the manual. He went all in on learning every aspect of what it takes to become a good photographer. Craig, you had mentioned he had often talked about these kind of early experiences in his life that were very formative. His grandfather worked for the railroad company and helped him to get a job on the railroad line as I think he said a chief fireman. And he always said that was one of his favorite jobs he ever had. It was nostalgic for him, and that led to him having this long love of model trains. Richard is a person who, when life happened to him, he embraced its gifts, and he made them his own gifts. And not only did he make them his own gifts, he shared them with everyone who he loved, and with everyone who was willing to listen. As he graduated from high school, went to Navy Pier for school, went to Roosevelt, he got a BA in psychology and a master's in administration and supervision. He went to law school for a couple of years, not really what he wanted to do. And that's what led him to teaching, to really pursuing one of his passions. Because what is teaching? It's sharing knowledge, it's sharing wisdom, and it's sharing hope with those that you're teaching. That sounds like Richard. And so he built an incredible program, a unique program. And in a part of the city where some would say often is lacking educational resources, he created educational resources and meaningful opportunities. 30 plus years of teaching. And at the same time, also having a full-time job as a photographer. He was always busy, always doing. And when he retired from teaching, he couldn't just retire. He had to go right into now being a full-time photographer. And that photography eye stuck with him all the time. But his eye was most keenly attuned to his family. And the two of you brought 3 wonderful children into this world, who you all loved in the unique ways that they needed to be loved. This is one of Richard's gifts and a shared gift that the two of you together bring. It's the ability to have unique and special relationships with all the people in your world. Whether your three children each had their own unique things they did with their father, whether it was going fishing, whether it was playing hockey, whether it was diving into baseball and baseball card collecting and going to this road trip to Detroit to catch an A's game. He would only do it right. He made you go extra early so that you could get all the autographs you wanted. But he scouted it out first and brought you back the next day. Or whether it was leaning into football, each of you had your own father, even while you shared a father. And when you brought your significant others into his life, he embraced them as his children and loved each of you and had his relationship with you in a unique and special way. And then all of you brought the most important gift in his world, his wonderful grandchildren, who, if I said anything but wonderful or anything less than, he'd be angry at me. I know. So I won't. Even for his grandchildren, he made it a point to get to know each of you for who you are. Whether you lived close by or you lived in Seattle, he wanted to be there. Lane, you and Richard have made it a point in your lives to teach through example what is really at the core of life, and that is the family and the hopes that we love. And so you have given us all these incredible gifts, gifts that your sons have all come up here to speak of. When I asked you what are some of those gifts, those life lessons, in addition to what Doug had shared, he also said that we learned that we can take the things we care about and incorporate them into everyday life, into what we do, into the ways that we even earn a living, as long as we are always looking for ways to share what we love. Always be eager to share and to always be curious about what we're doing. Because that's how Richard lived. He always wanted to know the details of every single thing that those around him were doing. And we learned that it's important to have a good work ethic. Richard, was so good at so many things because he dedicated himself and poured himself into achieving, but never at the expense of being with his family. And so, this man who has taught us wonderful sayings from all kinds of sci-fi movies, this man who has lifted us up into the heavens, not just figuratively, but literally. This man who has shared every Chicago sporting event with us over these past decades. It is our time now to be able to say thank you. Thank you for all that you have given us. As Edmund Hatch has written, because I think this is the way Richard lived. He wrote, "For me to have left one soul the better for my birth, to have added but one flower to the garden of the earth, to have struck one blow for truth in the daily fight with lies, to have done one deed of right in the face of calamities, to have sown in the souls of men and women one thought that will not die. This will be my link in the chain of life. This shall be my immortality." And we are here to give thanks because Richard has not just left one new thought. He's not just planted one seed in our souls. He has added a whole garden, a whole forest that we now can tend to and appreciate. This is his immortality. May it always be. And let us say,
Amen.
And it's at this time that I invite you to please rise together if you are able, as we honor him with the blessing of El Malay Rachamim, the prayer for his soul. You can find the translation of this prayer inside of our packets. El Malay Rachamim, שוכן במרומים. המצא מנוחה מלחמה תחת כנפי השכינה, עם קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע, מזהירים את נשמת לב בן ער וסטלה שהלך לעולמו. בעל הרחמים יסתירהו בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, ויצרור בדרכים את נשמתו אדוני. ונחלתו וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר אמן. We read together in our packet, El Malei Rachamim. Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Richard Klein, who entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in your eternal presence, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say. Now we are going to lovingly escort Richard's body into its final resting place on this earth, this place that is always going to be dedicated to his memory. And as we do, we're going to give you a moment to send your blessings for him silently and with a prayer for peace. After which we're going to give some earth to his family, earth that comes from Israel, to be able to place on in his graveside, as is according to the traditions of our people. And then once we put the vault cover on, we're going to give everyone else the chance to also put some earth from Illinois. Richard to his final resting place, we recognize that this isn't who he was. He has already been released from his bodily trappings, so his soul is now part of us, part of God, part of our universe. This is not the place where we find him. This is just a place where we have dedicated this patch of land to his memory. When we need him, we can hear him. We search our hearts and hear the words he would have said to us, the movie quotes he would have given to us. We will hear him rooting right beside us when we watch the Cubs, rooting right against us when we watch the White Sox. In this way, he will always be a part of us. So I'm going to now come to Richard's family to give you each a little bit of this earth from Israel, all of his children, sister, like children, grandchildren to come forward. Now that we have brought some of the earth from Israel to be here accompanying Richard's body here, we're going to place the vault cover on, after which we're going to give you the chance to come forward to place some earth onto the graveside. And once everyone who has chosen to do so has gotten the chance, we'll gather back together here to say the words of our mourners' Kaddish prayer for him. When we go to use the shovel, there's a tradition that we use the shovel upside down. And we use the back side of the shovel for the first scoop of earth as a sign of our reluctance to do this. No one would willingly choose to use a shovel upside down to move earth. So we do this to show that we're not doing this because we want to. We're doing this because we know we have to. And after the first scoop, you can turn it back over and use it the proper way for 2 or 3 more scoops of earth. And so as we prepare ourselves to do this, I share the song with you that prays that his soul will be as eternal as the sand and the sea and rush the waters and all that we know in nature. Shel hamayim erak hajamayim ilat hayam hakol v'hayam rishush shel hamayim berak hashamayim ilat long-lasting and as poignantly as all times of nature. Now we invite first Richard's family come forward to place some earth onto the gravestone.
Ladies and gentlemen, as you come forward, please watch your steps around the grave. I'd also like to remind you that the Klein family will be observing Shiva at their residence at 1352 Logsden Lane in Buffalo Grove tonight until 8 p.m. and tomorrow from 3 to 8 p.m. The address and phone number are also in your programs. If you need a copy of the program, please see us at the funeral coach as you exit the cemetery. Thank you.
Going from here to the back side.
Love these rocks, you know, so I just wanted to
Oh, okay. Yeah, Sue, right. Sue, yep, yep. Yeah, right. We're in Arizona. Actually, I think it's warmer, the humidity. We don't have humidity. No. Yeah. These are mine. No, no. She's going to be a grandmother. I'm in the Craig's
Oh, you know something?
It's dry.
You took a trip.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm under 10. Like, for instance, that's a bit of age makes it they don't have them. Yeah. Part of the teacher. Oh, okay. Just carrying it from garbage, you know. Let me hold.
Okay, you win. You win. Did you know you win? Huh? Did you know you win? Oh.
So friends, in just a moment, we're going to come back together to say the words of our mourner's Kaddish prayer.
Come towards the edge
I did 3.5.
Huh?
I did 3.5.
Okay, there you go.
Just correct.
So friends, now we are going to come back together to say the words of our mourner's Kaddish prayer. We invite you to please rise if you are able. And you can find the words of our Kaddish prayer on the back of the program. You have both the Hebrew and the transliteration. As we prepare ourselves to say this prayer, we want to acknowledge that this prayer does not mention death or dying, sadness or sorrow, but this prayer is a prayer that affirms the gift of life as a blessing. As we say this prayer, we are acknowledging that the blessing of Richard's life is good and worthwhile. And even through our tears, we say thank you. And so for him, we share together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah ve'alma divrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei v'chayechon u'vyomechon v'chayei techol beit Yisrael v'agalau v'zman kari v'imru amen Yehei shmei rabbah m'vorach le'olam u'almei almaya Yibarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh Yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudashah v'richu Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Tushbechata v'nechamata, Ta'amir Rangel ma v'imru, Amen. Yehi Shalama Rabba Mim Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Oseh Shalom V'imrumav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael v'imru. You're the source of peace and comfort to all of us in this time. And may the memory of Richard Klein always be a blessing to us, a blessing to our world through us. May this be our legacy. May this be his legacy and legacy. So with this, as we conclude our service here, we want to invite those of you who have come here to support Richard's family to join us over on this side of the tent, where we're going to invite you to make 2 lines, standing shoulder to shoulder, facing one another, leading away from